Your hands are steady, your preparation is complete, yet your heart is racing like something terrible is about to happen. Nothing is wrong, and still, everything inside you is collapsing. What if pressure isn't the enemy you think it is? Welcome to Quiet Discipline Method. Before we go any further, if you're drawn to calm strength, inner discipline, and learning how to stay grounded when life applies pressure, subscribe to this channel. Your support gives this space the energy to keep creating deeper, more meaningful work. Now let me take you into the moment where this story truly begins. My heart was pounding so violently that I could hear it in my ears. My palms were slick with sweat. Breathing felt strangely manual, as if my body had forgotten how to do something it had done effortlessly my entire life. I wasn't in danger. I wasn't being chased. I wasn't unprepared. And yet, my body was reacting as if survival itself was at stake. I was about to perform something I had practiced countless times. Every movement was familiar. Every step lived deep in muscle memory. There was no uncertainty about what to do next. Still, as I walked forward, a quiet panic rose inside me, sharp and convincing, whispering that this moment mattered too much to fail. That was the first time I truly encountered pressure, not as a challenge outside of me, but as a force generated within. Nothing around me had changed. No one was threatening me. No voice was telling me I wasn't good enough. And yet, my nervous system was on fire. That contradiction stayed with me long after the moment passed. How could someone be fully prepared and completely undone at the same time? What I didn't understand then, but see clearly now, is that pressure doesn't require danger. It only requires meaning. The moment we decide that something defines our worth, our image, or our identity, the stakes rise instantly. The body doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological one. To the nervous system, both feel equally real. That moment exposed a deeper pattern most of us never question. We assume pressure comes from expectations placed on us by others. But more often, it comes from the silent contracts we make with ourselves. The promise to be flawless, the fear of being exposed, the belief that this moment will somehow prove who we are. Pressure isn't created when we care. It's created when caring turns into self-judgment. And this is where many people get stuck. They try to eliminate pressure by preparing more, achieving more, or controlling outcomes more tightly. But that night taught me something unsettling. Preparation does not guarantee calm. Skill does not guarantee peace. The problem wasn't my ability. It was my relationship with the moment I was standing in. This is the threshold where everything changes. Because once you realize that pressure is internally generated, you also realize something else. If it's created inside you, it can be met inside you too. That realization doesn't remove discomfort. It doesn't make the heart stop racing instantly, but it opens a door to learning how to stand still inside intensity instead of being consumed by it. And that is where this journey truly begins. Reflection question for you. When pressure shows up in your life, what do you believe is happening? A. Something outside of me is threatening my success. B. Something inside me is demanding perfection. Comment A or B below. Your answer might reveal more than you expect. For a long time, I believed pressure came from the outside, from people watching, from expectations placed on me, from the possibility of being judged, compared, or found lacking. That belief is comforting in a strange way, because it allows us to blame the environment. If the pressure is out there, then maybe removing ourselves from the situation will make it disappear. But pressure doesn't work like that. When I looked more closely, I noticed something unsettling. The room hadn't changed. The people around me hadn't said a word. No one demanded perfection from me in that moment. And yet, my body reacted as if a verdict was about to be delivered. The truth was quiet and uncomfortable. The pressure wasn't coming from them. It was coming from me. Pressure is born the moment we attach our self-worth to performance. The moment we decide that doing well equals being enough and doing poorly equals failure as a person, we create an internal courtroom. Every action becomes evidence. Every mistake feels like a sentence. And suddenly the stakes are no longer about the task in front of us. They are about who we believe we are allowed to be. We rarely notice this shift because it happens subtly. It starts with wanting to do well. Then it becomes needing to do well. And before we realize it, our identity is entangled with the outcome. That is when pressure turns corrosive. Not because achievement is bad, but because we've turned achievement into a condition for belonging, respect, or self acceptance. This is the hidden cost of living in a culture obsessed with results. We are taught, directly and indirectly, that value must be proven, that rest is earned, that calm is a reward for success, not a foundation for it. So we push harder, tighten control, and chase an image of who we think we should be. All the while, something inside us is slowly contracting. The most damaging part of this pattern is that it feels responsible. It feels disciplined. It even feels admirable. We call it ambition. We call it drive. But underneath, there is often fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of being ordinary, fear of being seen without the armor of achievement. And fear is loud inside the body. When pressure comes from within, no amount of external reassurance can quiet it. Compliments don't land. Success feels fleeting. The finish line keeps moving because the problem was never the goal. It was the belief that reaching it would finally make us okay. This is where many people burn out without understanding why. They do everything right. They work harder, they prepare more, they succeed. And yet the tension remains. Because pressure that is self-generated cannot be solved by external fixes. Recognizing this is not about self-blame. It's about clarity. Once you see that pressure is internally constructed, you stop trying to outrun it. You stop negotiating with outcomes. You begin to question the assumptions you've been living under, especially the one that says your worth is something you must continuously earn. This realization doesn't remove pressure instantly, but it changes your relationship with it. And that shift is essential because it creates space for a different question to emerge, one that doesn't ask how to perform better, but how to stay grounded while performing at all. There was a period in my life when, from the outside, everything finally looked right. The struggle appeared to be over. I had checked the boxes that were supposed to guarantee stability, confidence, and peace. Education, credentials, momentum. I had entered the version of life many people are taught to chase, believing that once you arrive there, the inner tension will naturally dissolve. It didn't. The pressure didn't disappear, it evolved. It became quieter, more sophisticated, and far more exhausting. There was no single dramatic moment at first, just a slow accumulation of small compromises with myself, staying up later than my body could handle, eating not because I was hungry, but because I was overwhelmed, smiling automatically in rooms where I felt deeply disconnected. On paper, I was thriving. Internally, something was unraveling. What made this phase particularly confusing was the absence of an obvious problem. I wasn't failing. I wasn't lost. I wasn't struggling in ways that were visible or socially acceptable to talk about. And that made the internal collapse harder to name. When success surrounds you, discomfort feels like ingratitude. You learn to minimize it, to push through, to tell yourself that this is just the price of progress. But the body keeps its own score. It began to speak in ways I could no longer ignore. Tension that never fully released. A nervous system that stayed alert long after the workday ended. Moments of sudden overwhelm that seemed to come from nowhere. I tried to manage it the way I managed everything else, by doing more, learning more, fixing myself more efficiently. I studied the brain. I learned the language of stress and regulation. I practiced techniques designed to calm the mind. I did everything that looked like self-care on the surface. And while some of it helped temporarily, nothing addressed the deeper fracture. Because the issue was not a lack of tools, it was a lack of alignment. The moment everything came to a halt was not heroic or insightful. It was abrupt and humbling. A panic attack that sent me to the emergency room. Not because I was in danger, but because my body believed I was. That distinction matters. The threat was not external. It was the accumulation of years spent overriding internal signals in the name of achievement. Lying there, stripped of productivity and explanation, I was forced to confront a truth that had been easy to avoid. Success had not taught me how to stay with myself. I knew how to perform. I knew how to deliver. But I did not know how to remain present when pressure rose. That realization was painful, but it was also clarifying. It revealed that the problem wasn't the intensity of my life. It was the absence of an internal anchor. Without that anchor, every new level of responsibility amplified the same pattern. More demands, more pressure, less space to breathe. This stage marked a turning point. Not because I suddenly found the solution, but because I stopped asking the wrong question. Instead of asking how to eliminate pressure, I began to ask something far more honest. How do you stay grounded when pressure is unavoidable? For a long time, I believed the solution to pressure was reduction. Fewer demands, better circumstances, more time. I thought that if life could just calm down, I would finally feel steady. But life does not negotiate like that. It expands, contracts, accelerates, and demands, often without warning. Waiting for pressure to disappear is another way of postponing presence. What changed everything was a quieter decision to stop trying to escape pressure and instead learn how to meet it. Inner peace is often misunderstood as a passive state, something that happens when conditions are favorable. But real steadiness is active. It is not the absence of intensity. It is the ability to remain with intensity without being overtaken by it. This is where presence becomes essential, not as an idea, but as a practice. Presence begins with attention, not forced concentration, but honest awareness. Where is my attention right now? Is it trapped in future outcomes, rehearsing possible failures, scanning for threats that have not arrived? Or can it return to what is actually happening, this breath, this posture, this moment? Attention is the first reclaiming of agency. It interrupts the automatic spiral that pressure feeds on. But attention alone is fragile without intention. Intention is the internal decision that gives attention direction. It is the quiet choice to stay rather than dissociate or rush ahead. Intention sounds simple, but it is deeply confronting. It requires acknowledging discomfort without immediately trying to fix it. It is the difference between saying, I need this feeling to stop, and I am willing to be here with this feeling. The third element is discipline. Not discipline as punishment or rigidity, but as consistency. The nervous system does not respond to insight alone. It responds to repetition. Presence becomes reliable only when the body learns, through repeated experience, that staying is safe. This is why techniques practiced only in calm moments often fail under pressure. The system has not been trained to trust them when it matters. Discipline builds familiarity. Familiarity builds safety. Safety allows presence to remain accessible when intensity rises. Together, attention, intention, and discipline transform presence from a concept into a lived capacity. They allow the body and mind to align instead of working against each other. Pressure no longer signals danger by default. It becomes information, a signal that something meaningful is happening, not that something is wrong. This shift does not eliminate discomfort. Presence does not numb sensation or quiet the mind instantly. What it does is prevent escalation. It stops pressure from turning into panic, stress from turning into collapse. It creates a stable internal reference point that does not depend on outcomes. Choosing presence is not a one-time decision. It is a series of small, often unremarkable choices made repeatedly. To notice when attention drifts, to return without judgment, to stay with the body instead of abandoning it. Over time, these choices accumulate into something powerful, the ability to remain grounded in moments that once felt unmanageable. This is not about controlling experience. It is about relating to it differently. When presence is established, pressure no longer defines the moment. Before any martial artist learns how to strike, they learn how to stand. This is not symbolic, it is practical. Without a stable base, every movement becomes compromised. Power leaks. Balance fails. In Kung Fu, one of the first and most demanding lessons is a simple position known as the horse's stance. At first glance, it appears almost unimpressive. The feet are wide, the knees bend, the spine stays upright, the arms extend forward. Then you hold, and hold, and hold. Within moments, the body begins to resist. Muscles burn, the mind grows restless. Thoughts become loud and persuasive, offering countless reasons to stop. This position exposes something fundamental. Strength alone is not enough to remain steady. If you rely only on muscle, you will collapse quickly. The real lesson of the horse's stance is not endurance. It is commitment. To stay in the stance, you must decide to stay. That decision changes everything. When intention is clear, the body organizes itself differently. Breathing slows. Tension redistributes. The discomfort does not disappear, but it becomes workable. You are no longer fighting the position. You are inhabiting it. This is why the horse's stance is as much a mental discipline as it is a physical one. It trains the ability to remain present inside discomfort without immediately seeking relief. It teaches you to distinguish between pain that signals harm and discomfort that signals growth. Most importantly, it reveals how quickly the mind tries to escape the moment the body is challenged. Life places us in our own versions of the horse's stance all the time. Uncertainty, high expectations, responsibility without clear answers. Periods where progress feels slow and pressure feels constant. These moments demand the same quality the stance demands, the capacity to stay. Without presence, we drift. We search for distraction. We chase goals that are not fully ours, hoping movement will relieve the tension of standing still. But movement without grounding only increases instability. Like running harder on shifting ground, effort alone does not create safety. The horse's stance offers a different approach. It asks you to stop running internally, to lower your center, to feel your feet, to align your body with your intention. It teaches that stillness is not passivity. It is active engagement with what is happening now. In this stance, there is no performance, no audience, no outcome to achieve. There is only the choice to remain. And that choice builds a form of confidence that is not dependent on success or approval. It is the confidence that comes from knowing you can stay with yourself when things are uncomfortable. Over time, this practice reshapes how pressure is experienced. Instead of triggering immediate resistance, pressure becomes a signal to ground more deeply. Instead of scrambling for control, you return to alignment. The stance becomes internal, a way of meeting moments that challenge you without losing your center. The horse's stance is not something you outgrow. It is something you return to again and again. Because every new level of life requires a deeper, quieter form of stability. The world does not pause when we feel overwhelmed. Deadlines remain. Expectations persist. Uncertainty continues to surface, often without warning. Waiting for life to become less demanding is a strategy that quietly keeps us powerless. Pressure is not a temporary phase we outgrow. It is a constant companion of meaningful work and honest living. What changes is not the presence of pressure, but our relationship to it. There is a moment, often brief, often overlooked, that exists between stimulus and reaction. Pressure rises, the body tightens, the mind accelerates. And then, before the habitual response takes over, there is a small opening. In that opening lives choice. Not a dramatic choice, but a subtle one, to react automatically or to return to presence. Most reactions happen fast. They are shaped by conditioning, fear, and past experiences. We rush, we numb, we overthink. We attempt to regain control by pushing harder or pulling away. These reactions are understandable, but they come at a cost. Each time we abandon ourselves in the face of pressure, we reinforce the belief that we cannot stay. Presence offers a different path. It does not require the situation to change. It asks only that we change how we meet it. When we pause, even briefly, and bring attention back to the body, the breath, and the ground beneath us, we interrupt the escalation. The pressure does not vanish, but it loses its authority to dictate our state. This is where responsibility enters the conversation. Not responsibility as blame, but as ownership. No one else can choose presence for us. No one else can stand in our internal stance. Support can help, guidance can assist, but the decision to remain grounded must be made from within, again and again. This responsibility can feel heavy at first, but it is also profoundly freeing. It returns agency to where it belongs. Inner peace stops being something we chase in external circumstances and becomes something we cultivate internally. It becomes portable, accessible in meetings, in conflict, in uncertainty, in moments that once felt destabilizing. Presence is not about controlling emotions. It is about not being controlled by them. Emotions can rise and fall without defining identity. Sensations can move through the body without triggering collapse. Thoughts can appear without being immediately believed. This is not suppression. It is discernment. Over time, this practice reshapes how life is experienced. Pressure no longer signals that something is wrong. It signals that something matters. Instead of shrinking in response, you learn to widen your capacity to stay. Stillness becomes available even when circumstances are loud. The demands of the world will continue. The pace may even increase. But you are not required to meet that pace internally. You can slow down inside without disengaging from what matters outside. This is the quiet discipline of presence. It is built through small choices made consistently, through pauses that seem insignificant but accumulate power, through the willingness to stand your ground internally, regardless of what is happening around you. If inner peace is not something you are willing to take ownership of, it will remain fragile and conditional. But when you do take ownership, when you choose presence over reaction, you reclaim something essential. Not control over life, but steadiness within it. Pressure is not the enemy of life, but a test of the inner strength within each of us. We do not collapse because we lack ability, but because we lose presence when pressure arises. Inner peace does not come from eliminating stress, nor is it a reward for success. It is the result of training the ability to remain steady in moments of discomfort. When we learn to return to our breath, our body, and our intention, pressure no longer controls us. We begin to control how we show up in its presence.